Have you ever noticed that in this world, liars are celebrated with garlands, while those who dare to speak the truth are fiercely punished? Why is it that the honest are treated like bitter enemies, while the deceitful and hypocritical thrive? Today, we unlock the mystical and hard-hitting wisdom of Saint Kabir to reveal exactly why society fears the truth, and why walking the path of true devotion is as dangerous and difficult as walking on the razor-sharp edge of a sword. Prepare yourself for two deeply suspenseful stories that will completely shatter your understanding of destiny and karma. What happens when a king locks 3 lazy servants in a dungeon with nothing but the bags of fruit they gathered? The horrific realization they face will echo in your mind forever. And then, a grand royal feast, a hidden venomous snake, and 100 sudden deaths. But when the Lord of Death arrives to pass his final judgment, who actually takes the blame? The king? The snake? Or you? The cosmic answer to this chilling mystery will ensure you never gossip or criticize another soul again. Are you ready to face the bitter truth? Let's dive in.
Today, we will reflect on 2 couplets. The first couplet is: Sanch kaho to maran dhave, jhoothe jag patiana. कह कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, ऐसे जगत के हाले. Meaning is, if someone speaks the truth, people become angry and try to harm them, while the world easily believes lies. The second couplet is: Guru bhakti ati kathin hai, jo khade ki dhar. Aadha tircha karamri, seedha chale so par. Meaning is, devotion to the Guru is extremely difficult, like walking on the sharp edge of a sword. Those who behave crookedly or carelessly get hurt, but the one who walks straight crosses over safely. Let us begin with the first couplet. Sanch kaho to maran dhave, jhoothe jag patiana. कह कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, ऐसे जगत के हाले. In summary, you can understand from this couplet that people in this world do not easily accept the truth. They project their anger onto the person who speaks the truth and try to cause them harm in one way or another. In this world, it is the liars who are welcomed and celebrated. This has become the way of the world. However, destiny always sides with the truth. The unseen divine forces use hidden, mysterious ways to punish those who practice hypocrisy and walk on the path of falsehood. No matter how much the world welcomes untruth, the divine forces ultimately correct and penalize the travelers of that deceptive path. Now, we will understand this couplet in detail. In this couplet, Saint Kabir paints an inner picture of the tendencies of the human mind. Saint Kabir says that in the depths of their mind, a person remains connected only to falsehood and lies, not to the truth. On the outside, they say one thing, but within them lies something entirely different. Their speech and behavior are merely for show, nothing more than an outward display. Internally, a person is deeply tied to untruth. A person's outer self is completely different from their inner mind. Their behavior is contrary to their mind, and it is also different from their thoughts. Human beings are entirely fragmented in their thoughts, words, and actions. They think one thing, say something else, and their actions turn out to be completely different altogether. A person thinks one thing in their mind, but what they speak is completely different, and what they actually do is even more different. There is absolutely no harmony among their thoughts, words, and speech. Within their mind, their thoughts may be completely corrupt, yet from their mouth, they speak highly attractive, sweet, and enticing words. They talk to everyone in an extremely sweet manner on the outside, while their mind remains entirely polluted. What they actually do in practice is completely different from their thoughts, their inner mind, their displayed emotions, and their spoken words. Such a person has many faces. They are one way in their mind, another way in their words, and entirely different in their actions. In this manner, they constantly deceive and mislead their friends, relatives, and co-workers. When the time comes, such a person never agrees and never admits to what they did or why they did it. Instead, they claim with absolute certainty that they never said such a thing or acted in that manner. They never accept responsibility for their own words. They constantly change their statements. They say one thing in the morning and something completely different by the evening. They keep changing their perspective as well. Such a person is always busy finding faults in others, while considering themselves to be incredibly great and truthful. They place all the blame on others and view them as entirely guilty. Yet, in the depths of his mind, he knows very well that he is backing out of his own words. He knows in his heart of hearts that he is deceiving others. In this manner, a person spends their entire life living in absolute falsehood and lies. They present one face to the world, while being completely different on the inside. Not only that, but they also wear different masks for different people. Thus, he lives his life solely by deceiving others. He runs his business by cheating. All his actions are built entirely on untruth. He does not even know what truth really is. He puts a large religious mark or tika on his forehead, pretending to be a great devotee of God. You must have often seen this exact behavior in society. In business, he sells his goods by adulterating them and telling lies. In this way, he accumulates wealth through sinful means and becomes a rich man. Throughout his life, he never realizes how much harm he is causing to humanity. He is a hypocrite whose words never match his true intentions. As the saying goes, he has one set of teeth for chewing and another for show. His entire world is built on this hypocrisy, and his behavior is equally fake. In this manner, he distances himself completely from the truth. Throughout his life, he never realizes that truthfulness and speaking the truth are themselves forms of the divine. In reality, through his actions, his deeds, and his mindset, he always remains far away from God. He believes that because he goes to the temple every day, gives charity, and performs devotions, he should be blessed, yet, his life remains filled with nothing but endless suffering. Why are there always hardships and miseries in his life? Why does illness constantly dwell in his home? Even his children turn out to be ill-mannered and behave disrespectfully. They do not focus on their studies at all. It is not that he holds back from spending money on them, he spares no expense. He provides them with the best food and spends millions on their education. Yet, he fails to bring any improvement to their mental and moral state. In the end, God does not help him in any way. He even blames God, thinking, despite doing so much good, why is nothing going well for me? If, for some reason, the reality or the truth is brought before him, he refuses to accept it. He simply labels the truth as false. When someone shows him the mirror and reveals the reality of his actions and his life, it becomes completely unbearable for him. He tries his best to prove every truth spoken about him as a lie. It makes him feel as though someone has rubbed salt into his wounds because he stays so far away from the truth. Lies have become his very life, therefore, the truth feels like nothing but salt on an open wound. He remains constantly angry at anyone who tries to show him the mirror. He never likes them, in fact, he becomes a bitter enemy of the one who reveals the truth to him. He makes every possible effort to display his hostility and cause harm to that person. Such a man simply cannot tolerate the truth or truthful people. He inevitably becomes their enemy. Driven by the arrogance of his wealth and the power of his position, he constantly tries to crush those who dare to speak the truth. This is exactly what happens across society and almost everywhere in the entire world, something you can clearly observe and feel all around you. Truth is not welcome anywhere, while liars are honored with garlands of flowers. This has become the law of modern society and the world. However, when the time comes and the cup of one's sins is full, destiny reveals its true face through its own hidden ways. Destiny has its own mysterious forms that a deceitful person cannot comprehend. First of all, destiny uses its quiet, subtle ways to give him every opportunity to understand and mend his ways. But if he still refuses to correct himself, destiny may then inflict physical suffering upon him. He may face severe losses in his business, or his family may be struck by a terrible crisis. He might even become a victim of sudden accidents. This is destiny's own way of correcting the balance. He may also become a victim of natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, or even wars. Yet, despite all this, he complains, "I have never done anything wrong in my life. Why is this happening only to me?" Now, the question arises, what should such a person do? In the beginning, no one can make him understand. But when suffering strikes him from all directions, he finally looks inward. He examines himself and tries to understand. When he dives deep into his own heart and studies his own nature, his wrong deeds begin to appear clearly before him. At this point, he is left with only one path: to reform himself and stand by the truth. Only when he aligns himself with the truth can he experience the state of the ultimate witness. Only then can he truly live in harmony with himself and his soul, and sincerely repent for the sins he has committed. If he sincerely seeks forgiveness from the ones he has caused suffering to, he can quickly free himself from his sins. There is immense power in forgiveness. If he walks on the path of meditation, his capacity to ask for forgiveness increases naturally. Seeking forgiveness strikes a direct blow to the ego, causing it to dissolve into nothingness. In this state of egolessness, he begins to search for the true purpose of life. He starts pondering, why was I born? And why did I commit so many sins? It is then that he truly understands the reality of how he treated others. He realizes that whatever is happening to him now, in one form or another, is simply the echo of his own past action. He never chose the path of truth throughout his life, he always stood by falsehood. Now, he must face the consequences himself so that he can dissolve and clear his past actions. This is the absolute law of karma and destiny. If he endures the suffering gracefully and cheerfully, it will become easier for him, knowing that he brought these hardships upon himself through his own sins. In one way or another, under the law of destiny, he must pay the price for his past deeds. This can be easily understood through this story. The fruit of wrong actions always brings suffering upon oneself, and one is forced to endure it in deep misery and tears. However, if you face it cheerfully, the journey becomes much easier. This is the divine law. The simple and accessible method to realize the truth within a person has been beautifully revealed in this story. The story tells us that a king once wished to test the honesty and truthfulness of his closest employees. After much thought, he came up with a simple method to find out how truthfully and devotedly they performed their duties. He thought, this simple test will reveal within a few hours exactly how honest they are and how they follow the path of truth while doing their work. I will have no trouble arriving at a clear conclusion. My test will become a mirror for them, showing them the true reflection of their own actions. He called his 3 closest employees at different times. By calling them at separate intervals, he ensured that none of them would know what task was being given to the others. To each employee, he gave the exact same instruction: I will not be having my regular meal today. Take this bag, go into the garden, and bring it back full of fruits for me. He wanted to see how much loyalty and honesty they would put into such a simple task. Although the assignment was very simple, the weather was extremely hot, making it quite challenging for them. Gathering a whole bag full of fruits in the peak of summer took a long time, especially with the hot summer winds blowing all around. However, the employees thought to themselves that the king would likely just have the bag placed in one corner. After that, he would either forget about it entirely or simply ask someone to slice 1 or 2 fruits for him to eat. This line of thinking was quite natural for them. Thinking this way, Each of them approached the task with a completely different mindset and made their own effort to complete it. They did not want to work too hard under the blazing sun. They figured that the king would never look deep inside such a large bag, nor could he possibly eat so many fruits. Thus, the three employees thought about it in three entirely different ways. The first employee worked with great dedication and integrity. He searched for the best quality fruits and took a long time to carefully fill his bag. He believed that any task assigned to him must be done with complete honesty and faith. He thought, even if the king does not eat these fruits, someone else will. My hard work will not go to waste, and I will find peace in doing my job well. Thus, with absolute sincerity and labor, he gathered the finest fruits. The second employee also gathered fruits, but he simply tossed in whatever he could find first without putting in much effort. He did not work hard at all. As a result, his bag contained a mix of some good fruits, some rotten ones, and some that were completely inedible. He managed to fill the bag, but his work lacked sincerity and care. He performed the task merely for show, built on a foundation of dishonesty. The third employee thought to himself, "There are always so many bags lying around in the palace. I will just place my bag among them. No one will ever notice. Once it is kept at the designated spot, nobody will be able to tell the difference between my bag and the others." Thinking this way, without putting in any hard work, he simply stuffed the bag with whatever dry leaves and grass he could find. He then rested for a while and returned to the palace with his bag. He did all of this out of complete dishonesty and solely for the sake of show. After 3 to 4 hours, the king, who was waiting for the three employees to return, called them in along with their bags. He also summoned a trusted soldier. The king commanded the soldier, "Lock these three up in the prison cells. Put each of them in a separate cell along with their respective bags. Do not give them anything to eat for the next 10 days. They will survive only on what they have gathered in their bags. Absolutely nothing else is to be given to them." The first employee accepted his imprisonment cheerfully. He had excellent, high-quality fruits with him, and his bag was completely full. The fruits he had gathered from the palace garden were so delicious that he had never even seen anything like them before. He thanked the king and went to the prison cell with the soldier. The second employee became deeply worried. He said to the king, "I have filled the bag with a mix of both bad and good fruits. A few of these fruits are fit for your consumption, and since you would not eat all of them anyway, I just threw in whatever fruits I could find. Now, if I eat these rotten fruits, I might fall sick. I will surely get ill." The king replied, "I cannot do anything about that. As you have sown, so shall you reap. Eat them or stay hungry." The third employee burst into tears. Feeling deeply miserable, he begged for forgiveness and said, "O king, please forgive me. I filled my bag with nothing but dry leaves and grass. I did this because I thought nobody would actually eat the fruits, as fruits often go bad anyway. The king replied in a stern voice, "Eat this grass and leaves, this is your punishment." The employee walked away weeping. The king then remarked, "Whatever you think and whatever you do, that is exactly what you will get." Therefore, the purpose of this story is to show that work done with truthfulness brings you happiness from within. Lies and wrong actions only bring you misery and make you unhealthy. A person receives the exact fruits of their own actions in every form, whether they suffer through family crisis, fall ill, or lose all their wealth and property. Kabirji says that truth in itself is sublime. It naturally brings prosperity and happiness. Truthfulness is a divine virtue, and truthfulness itself is the true devotion to God. Truth is life. There is absolutely nothing greater than this. Everything else brings nothing but endless suffering. Furthermore, Saint Kabir says that truthfulness is the greatest form of life. It is through truthfulness that consciousness expands, and it is through truth that one experiences the state of the ultimate witness. A person who lives in truth has nothing to hide. They do not even need to constantly calculate or overthink, which saves their mental energy from being wasted. By living in truth, a person remains pure and unblemished. Truth is the ultimate radiance, truth is the supreme power. It is always truth that triumphs. That is why it is always said, Satyamev Jayate, that means truth alone triumphs. And it is said, Satyam Shivam Sundaram, truth is the divine, and it is the most beautiful. There is nothing greater than this. In the end, it is appropriate to say that truth is God Himself. Whoever stands by the truth, no matter how many hardships they face, truly walks hand in hand with the divine. Now, we come to the second couplet by Saint Kabir. Guru Bhakti ati kathin hai, jo khade ki dhar. Aadha tirchha cat mare, seedha chale so par. In life, every person eventually becomes skilled in performing worldly tasks in one way or another. Through their work, they also manage to earn wealth and property. However, attaining true devotion to God is extremely difficult. Devotion requires a disciplined life, self-control, purity, and above all, the supreme grace and blessings of the divine. Walking on the path to God is like walking on the sharp edge of a sword. Devotion demands patience, effortless grace, and absolute simplicity. Without divine grace, it is practically impossible to even walk on this path. Now, understand this deeply. Human consciousness is a wonderful and mysterious combination of the mind and the physical body. What this means is that the mind and consciousness reside completely within the human body. The body itself is composed of the 5 elements: earth, water, air, fire, and space. Each of these elements contributes immensely to our existence. All the physical needs of the body are easily fulfilled while living in this world. The requirements of these 5 elements are met in one way or another through worldly means. A person only needs to put in a little physical effort, which is essential for the body and for earning a livelihood. The mind plays a massive role in the human body. Desires and passions exist within the mind in many different forms. In fact, the mind is the very home of these desires and passions. From time to time, these desires and cravings of the mind are fulfilled only through the cooperation of the physical body. It is the human body that executes and satisfies what the mind craves. In addition to this, consciousness also resides within the body. This consciousness exists in the human body as the soul. The soul is nothing but a manifestation of the divine. It enters the human being at birth and leaves the body after death. All actions within the human body take place solely in the presence of the soul. The soul provides light just like the sun, yet it never interferes in any action. Just as the sun shines upon you but never interferes in whatever you do, the soul also radiates light but never interferes in any of man's actions. The soul resides within the body as a catalytic agent. Just as a chemical reaction requires a catalytic agent, without which the chemical process cannot take place, the presence of a catalyst is absolutely essential for any chemical reaction to occur. In the exact same way, the soul is the ultimate fuel of life. It is solely due to the presence of the soul that life functions, and it is the soul alone that illuminates and powers our entire existence. Understand this through another example: hydrogen and oxygen combine to form water. However, if you simply mix hydrogen and oxygen together, water will not be formed on its own, not until an electric spark is introduced. The moment you release that electric spark, water is instantly created. This electric spark acts as the catalytic agent, which represents the soul. It is solely due to its presence that water is formed. In the exact same way, neither the body nor the mind can perform any action without the soul. The soul functions purely as a catalytic agent within the human body. The evolution of the soul within the body takes place through devotion to God. The soul unfolds only through meditation, divine love, and the chanting of mantras. If you do not practice meditation, if you do not chant mantras, and if you lack divine love, the evolution of your soul will remain stagnant. All these spiritual practices cannot be achieved through mere physical labor. Hard work alone can only perform mechanical tasks. If you truly want to evolve the soul, purity of the mind is absolutely essential. If the mind is not pure, you will neither be able to meditate nor focus on chanting mantras. The mind becomes pure only when your food and nourishment are pure. The purity of food is of utmost importance. Listening to the name of God through your ears is also a form of nourishment. Beholding the divine form of God through your eyes is a form of nourishment as well. That is why it is often said, as is the food, so is the mind. Whatever you feed yourself, whether as physical food, by hearing the divine name, or by keeping the image of the divine in your sight, is what makes your mind pure. Without pure food, pure air, and pure water, the mind cannot attain purity. When the mind is not pure, your thoughts will never be pure. And in such a state, it is impossible to truly remember and contemplate the name of God. An impure mind keeps wandering constantly, it can never find peace. The mind becomes calm only when there is purity within both the body and the mind. Otherwise, the mind can never stay focused in one place. It is only a pure and sacred mind that truly attains stillness. And it is only when the mind becomes completely still that devotion to God, chanting of mantras, and meditation become possible. This is precisely why devotion to God is said to be so difficult. Because as long as the mind is not still, meaning, as long as the mind remains restless, true devotion cannot take place. Therefore, to quieten the mind, bringing a transformation and improvement into one's lifestyle is absolutely essential. For devotion to God, brahmacharya or celibacy or righteous conduct is also absolutely essential. The true meaning of brahmacharya is to conduct oneself like the divine, to live according to God's will and to align one's way of life entirely with the divine. Devotion to God becomes possible only when your daily conduct mirrors the divine nature. This is precisely why it is said that devotion to God is like walking on the edge of a sword. Complete self-transformation and absolute purity of life are essential, otherwise, a person cannot truly immerse themselves in devotion. Walking according to God's will is indeed like walking on the sharp edge of a sword. This is the difficult process. For true devotion to blossom, one's mind, words, and actions must all become completely pure. A person who lacks self-control and is devoid of love can never walk on this path. It is absolutely essential for the mind to be empty of thoughts and worldly desires. Only then can one truly immerse oneself in the practice of meditation. Only then does true devotion to God blossom. And when devotion awakens, it leads to the evolution and expansion of consciousness, which in turn deepens one's love for the divine. Following this, one begins to perceive the true goal of life. This brings ultimate peace to life and grants the constant, close presence of God. A person who refrains from any harmful or unrighteous deeds, meaning, one who performs only good and noble actions, is considered a reflection of the divine himself. Their conduct becomes purely auspicious. It is within such a person that the soul fully evolves, enabling them to safely cross the vast ocean of worldly existence. This is precisely why Saint Kabir places the utmost emphasis on true devotion to God. For true devotion to God and the practice of meditation, the stages of yam means social ethics, niyama means personal discipline, asana means posture, pranayama means breath control, pratyahara means withdrawal of senses, dharana means concentration, and dhyana means meditation are absolutely essential. To live with complete awareness is to live in consciousness. This is what births true devotion, and this is what it truly means to live in God. Devotion to God is realized only when all your actions transform into akarma, that is actionless action. Akarma means that when you perform every task with absolute awareness and mindfulness, those actions no longer bind you. Only after reaching this state is true devotion possible. Once you attain this, experiencing the soul becomes effortless. To show compassion toward all living beings is also a way of becoming one with the divine. Practicing non-violence in your life is nothing less than living firmly in the presence of God. It is through the harmony and cooperation of all these virtues that compassion blossoms in life. A person's heart becomes truly sensitive, kind, and loving, which ultimately paves the way for deep devotion to God. When devotion awakens, consciousness expands, and a profound inner stillness or void fills one's being. Through devotion to God, the Kundalini energy is also awakened and elevated. It is then that one experiences the state of the ultimate witness, leading to the divine union of Shakti or Goddess Parvati with Lord Shiva. This spiritual progression brings the state of Savikalpa Samadhi or a state of ecstasy by absorption with awareness and, in due time, leads to Nirvikalpa Samadhi or a state of ecstasy by absorption without dualism. One transcends from the Turiya or the fourth state of consciousness into the Turyatit, that is the state beyond the fourth. All of this is the sublime glory of devotion to God. In this state, one begins to perceive the divine presence everywhere. Following this realization, an absolute simplicity and effortless grace flow into life, which is the greatest virtue of human existence. Only then does a person become entirely pure, arriving into the closest proximity of the divine, where the individual soul finally merges into the Supreme Soul. Saint Kabir says that self-control, brahmacharya or righteous conduct, and peace of mind are absolutely essential in life. It is only then that the desire to attain the divine awakens within the mind, spiritual knowledge dawns, and a person naturally performs pure actions. Saint Kabir makes it completely clear that devotion to God is exceedingly difficult. It is absolutely mandatory for a person to be completely pure in every single way. Walking this path is truly like walking on the razor-sharp edge of a sword. To live in absolute simplicity and effortless grace is to be immersed in devotion, just like Lord Shiva. Only then does one experience the state of the ultimate witness. In this very state, the energy of Goddess Parvati or Shakti merges with Lord Shiva, and it is then that the divine Tandav, the divine dance takes place. It is through this Tandav or divine dance of Shiva that consciousness fully evolves and expands, allowing a person to finally become completely one with the divine. There is a short story. A devotee of God, a wealthy merchant, and a king once went to a Sadguru. They prayed to the Sadguru, saying, "We are searching for individuals who possess virtues just like ours. so that we may make them our successors. The Sadguru replied, finding worthy men who possess virtues like yours is an extremely difficult task. Even so, disguise yourselves, go into the city, and search. Perhaps you might find someone worthy who shares your qualities. The three of them searched for many days, but it became virtually impossible for them to find any worthy person according to their standards. This was because they wanted someone who was a true devotee of God, loyal, self-controlled, and living entirely according to the divine will. When they failed to find anyone suitable, they returned to the Sadguru and said, "We were unable to find anyone." The Sadguru then said, "Ask yourselves, look within, and reflect on how you managed to acquire these virtues. How did these qualities awaken within you? You will realize that they came to you only after a lifetime of spiritual practice, sadhana. In this modern era, you will not find such ready-made individuals by simply searching the world. However, if you find young children in society, adopt them from an early age, and nurture their capabilities, it is possible that over time, divine virtues will blossom within them. If you find 4 or 5 children in the world and develop them, it is likely that at least one child will grow into the capable person you desire. The Sadguru further explained, in society, most people are devoid of virtues. Even with teaching and training, wisdom fails to develop in them because the level of values and capability in modern families has declined significantly. For this very reason, noble virtues are diminishing, and man's inner standard is falling. This is the only way. Make an effort, and perhaps by divine grace, you will achieve success when the time is right. The core meaning of this short episode is singular: guide your future generation toward God so that you can pass your responsibilities on to them. Even within a family, fully developing a child's character is highly challenging, and finding children in society to nurture them is harder still. Yet, the Sadguru concluded, for capable and resourceful individuals like you, this is the most appropriate path, that you may guide a few children forward onto this divine path. There is a deeply touching story that clearly illustrates how God completely protects his devotee, even when the devotee is not a participant in any mischief or wrongdoing. Even if he has no direct hand in the situation, he still takes full mental responsibility, feeling that he is somehow indirectly to blame for the event that unfolded before his eyes. Holding oneself responsible in this manner clearly demonstrates that the devotee's consciousness has fully evolved and expanded. Such an advanced state of consciousness is achieved only with great difficulty, by truly walking on the razor-sharp edge of a sword. The story goes like this: on an auspicious day, a king hosted a grand feast and invited many devotees of God. He prepared a very delicious rice pudding or kheer enriched with dry fruits, along with many other delicacies. The event was organized in the beautifully scenic and magnificent garden of his palace. All the invited devotees gathered there. A mesmerizing and beautiful chanting of divine mantras was performed, which continued throughout the gathering. The delicious kheer was being cooked with dry fruits in a massive pot, alongside various other dishes. However, quite unexpectedly, a small venomous snake fell into the open pot of kheer. Absolutely no one noticed it. Neither the chef nor any of the other palace workers saw it happen. The feast began, and a short while after consuming the food, the devotees, one by one, began falling terribly ill and passing away. The situation became incredibly unbearable and agonizing. Eventually, someone spotted the dead snake inside the large pot of rice pudding. At that moment, the king and his ministers finally understood the cause of this catastrophe. Although some of the devotees were saved, more than 100 of them tragically lost their lives. The king felt an immense, overwhelming agony. He pondered deeply over who was to blame for this tragedy. Was it the king who was guilty? Or was it the chef? Or was the snake the culprit? The situation was incredibly perplexing. Ultimately, the king held himself responsible, reasoning that he was the one who had organized the feast in the first place. He was filled with a profound sense of despair, so much so that he abandoned his palace and set out toward the forest. He kept walking in deep dejection, and by the time darkness fell, he had reached a distant village. Needing a place to spend the night, he sought shelter at the house of a devotee of God. The next morning, the host woke up quite late. The king was just about to leave when the master of the house finally arose. The king asked him, "Why did you sleep in so late today?" The devotee replied, "I was fast asleep and having a very strange dream. The sound of you getting ready woke me from my dream, which is why I am late. Usually, I wake up very early, but today was an exception. Since you are my guest, please have a meal before you depart." The king accepted his invitation. Out of pure curiosity, the king asked, "What kind of strange dream were you having that you couldn't even wake up on time?" The devotee replied, "The dream was such that a king had organized a grand feast in his palace, and suddenly a snake fell into the pot of kheer. Several devotees lost their lives. When Yamraj, the Lord of Death, received the news of this incident, he was utterly unable to decide who the real culprit was. Was the king guilty? Was the snake guilty? Or was the chef to blame? It was right in the middle of this dilemma that my sleep was broken. Perhaps this dream will continue tonight, because even now, those thoughts are swirling intensely in my mind." The king's astonishment knew no bounds. This was truly a bizarre twist of fate, as the devotee had absolutely no idea that the guest staying in his house was the king himself. At that moment, a strong desire arose in the king's heart to stay for one more night, so that he could discover Yamraj's final judgment and find out what happens next in the dream. The king then said, "Your village and this place are incredibly beautiful and peaceful. I would like to stay here for one more night." The devotee replied, It would be my pleasure to have you stay, and it will give me another opportunity to serve you. The king stayed for one more day. The next morning, when he woke up, the devotee was already awake. The king was incredibly eager and anxious to know about his dream, but today, the devotee showed no sign of curiosity or excitement at all. The king was deeply surprised that the host wasn't mentioning the dream at all, especially since that was the sole reason the king had agreed to stay back. When the devotee still did not say anything about his dream, the king could no longer contain himself. Just before departing, he let his curiosity get the better of him and asked about the dream himself. The devotee replied with absolute simplicity, "Yamraj, the Lord of Death, observed and realized that the citizens of the kingdom were baselessly gossiping and speaking ill of the king. When he saw this blind criticism, Yamraj quietly transferred the entire sin onto the public, who were bad-mouthing the king without any sense of discernment or truth. This was Yamraj's judgment. In this way, the king, the chef, and the snake were all entirely freed from the sin. Therefore, the ultimate message of this story is that God completely protects His devotees. When you mentally accept responsibility even for an unintended mistake, one that you did not deliberately commit, just to shield others, put yourself through hardship, and ensure the well-being of others, it reflects the highest state of consciousness. The greatest lesson here is this: if you speak ill of someone or indulge in backbiting and criticism, understand that you are taking their sins and negativity upon your own head. In a way, you are consuming their bad karma. A wrongdoer or criminal gets liberated from the weight of their own misdeeds if the rest of the world busy themselves criticizing and gossiping about them. By speaking ill of anyone, even unintentionally, the burden of that sin shifts entirely onto those who are doing the criticizing. This is the absolute law of Yamraj and destiny. Never speak ill of anyone in your life, especially a devotee of God or a self-realized, enlightened soul. A true devotee and an enlightened soul will never deliberately cause harm to anyone. If you indulge in criticizing them, all their sins will shift onto you, while the devotee of God is completely liberated from them. God always steps in to help His devotees in one way or another. So, the core purpose of this message is to live with discernment and wisdom. Never slander or backbite about anyone, even unintentionally. If you criticize others, their bad karma and the sins committed by them will enter your own life. This is the unyielding law of creation. A person who speaks ill of someone is essentially carrying that person's sins on their own head. In this story, the public mindlessly slandered the enlightened king. As a result, the immense sin of the deaths of over 100 devotees was divided and distributed chunk by chunk among the gossiping public. Consequently, the king was freed from the sin, the chef was freed from the sin, and even the snake was liberated. The ultimate summary of the story is this: never criticize anyone, and most importantly, never speak ill of a devotee of God and an enlightened soul. Thank you.